from a picture of my cat Nuni when she was a kitten. So that's her left eye. So I've demonstrated how to draw a human eye in charcoal and graphite and a cat eye in charcoal and graphite. There is some difference in appearance between the human eye and the animal eye, but the process, I believe, was very similar. there is the upper eyelid and then lower eyelid, and the placement of the lashes or hair remains very similar. And I use the same strategy of blocking in dark areas first with charcoal and using the blending stump to move around the powder, and I use the vine charcoal in areas where I wanted the feathery grays. And also went back in with the 2B pencil to create the transitional areas between charcoal and graphite. Now I'm going to show you how to draw the anime eye. I thought a lot of you might find this really interesting because it's a really simple way of drawing the human eye. And I just want to show you how these two are very relevant. Anime eyes are just a very simplified and abstracted version of the realistic eye. So I'm going to show you how you can create or how you can draw the anime eye, different versions, using ink and brush. You need a jar of clean water. I have a jar of just 100% India ink. You have this with you. And I also have a jar of diluted ink. This is 1:1 ink to water ratio. Okay, so 1 part ink to 1 part water. And if you have a glass or plastic jar like this at home, it's going to be really useful. You can recycle your bottles. And you need your round brushes. Okay, I have a medium size and a small size. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to draw a semi-realistic version of the anime eye, as well as the stylized version of the anime eye. Okay. So semi-realistic is very similar to the realistic eye that we practiced drawing previously, except everything is simplified. Okay, so you're not drawing in every lashes, just a couple of them that are the most emphasized and prominent. And just the values are really simplified, so you see two main values. I'm going to use undiluted ink, pure ink for the shadows, and the diluted ink for the middle value, the gray, and leave the highlights negative. Okay. For the stylized eye, it's really cute. So stylized eye is cuter, it appears more youthful, more infantile, right? And it is very abstracted, so you don't see any lashes anymore, and it's so stylized that the eye itself is just kind of like a circular oval shape. I wanted to show you how you can create the gradation using ink, as you see here. Okay, so let's practice drawing these two versions of anime eye, and I'm going to post the link to where you can access these anime eyes so you can practice on your own at home. Okay, so I've blocked in the upper eye and the lower part of the eye. leaving this part, this gap. This gap here. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start blocking in the shadows in the iris, the dark part of the eye. Okay, I'm going to start out by drawing that bold outline around the iris first, and then I'm going to block in the shadow that's being cast from the upper eyelid right here, leaving this highlight negative. Okay, so once the black ink is all dry, I'm ready to shade in the gray value, the middle value here. Okay, again, there are only three values in the anime eye: the dark, middle, and light. And the light, I'm just leaving it negative. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use the diluted ink and do a small test patch here to see if I like the value. Okay. I think it's pretty good value. It's like the middle gray, but I feel like I could possibly add a little bit more water to it too. So I'm just going to add a couple more drops of water in the diluted ink in my jar. Okay, and then I'm just going to use that ink to fill in this space right here, leaving this highlight negative. Okay, so there it is, the semi-realistic anime eye. So please understand that this semi-realistic anime eye has all the components that were explored previously in the realistic human eye that we drew in with charcoal, right? There's the upper eyelid, the lower eyelid, a little bit of reflected light here, the round iris, the pupil, and the shadow coming from the upper eyelid, and the highlights. Okay, so using the pure 100% India ink, I'm going to outline the eye. I'm also focusing on making the width of the line consistent throughout. Okay. Now, also using the pure ink, go ahead and draw this fold of skin. The double eyelid fold of skin, we drew this when we were drawing the realistic eye before with charcoal. And lastly, draw the eyebrow. Okay, I'm pressing a little bit harder in front where it's thicker, and slowly releasing the pressure towards the end, like this. Okay. So I'm going to show you how you can create the gradation, the wash effect here. It starts out pretty dark and then becomes lighter. Okay, so the value that I see here is kind of like the in-between the pure India ink and the diluted version. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a little bit of the diluted ink and mix it into my pure India ink. Okay. And I'm going to try a test patch here in this corner. Okay, that's still too dark, so I'm just going to grab a little bit of water and then add it directly into my pure ink container. Test patch. Oh, it's still pretty dark. I think it might be easier if I add a little bit of the pure ink into my diluted ink. Okay, let's see what kind of value that creates. Okay, so this is pretty good. Add a little bit more ink to it so it's a little bit darker. I just poured the remaining ink right into the diluted container. Okay, so this is much better. Okay, so go ahead and use that ink and start blocking about top half of the eye, the upper half of the eye, leaving the big highlight negative. Block in the upper half. that's about 1/2 of the eye. If you want to make the value more even, go ahead and apply the second layer. Focusing on areas where it's lighter or it's more washed out. So just kind of fill in so it's more even. Okay. After this, you just kind of have to continue working wet into wet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to get clean water and then just kind of mix or like kind of rub the edges a little bit before it dries out, and then using that ink continue filling in the bottom half, also leaving the second highlight negative, just like this. Okay, I'm going to get the diluted ink and just continue adding to this edge in between, just to create the gradation so it's not drastically getting lighter all of a sudden. And before this dries out, dip your paintbrush into the clean water container and then just bring down the wet ink towards the bottom. And then wipe your brush on paper towel so it's clean. Dip your brush into clean water container and then continue bringing down the wet ink towards the bottom. Okay, so there's this slow, subtle fade happening. And before all this ink dries out, just continue moving around your ink so that your fade is very smooth and there isn't this rough edge happening. Okay. You can also control the value by using the dry brush technique, which is apply a little bit of ink on the surface and then wipe off all the liquid on your brush and just use the dry brush to move around the pigment. And this method works best if you work pretty quickly. So you're working wet into wet rather than layering on dry surface. Able to create this soft fade using ink. So here's how you can draw the semi-realistic version of the anime eye and really simplified version of the anime eye. Okay? Alright, hope that was helpful. Enjoy drawing and painting at home, guys.